The year is 2147, and humanity is caught in the middle of a galactic war. The human fleet, led by Captain Marcus Drake, is far from ready for the war that's about to change everything. They've fought off skirmishes, faced enemy forces, but nothing prepared them for what was about to happen. As the massive human ships zoomed through space, a sense of tension hung in the air. They were heading toward a peaceful diplomatic mission, something the humans thought would help them avoid a bigger conflict with the AI-controlled alien species, the Zolorians. Captain Marcus Drake stood on the bridge of the USS Resolve, staring out into the endless expanse of space. The stars, distant and calm, were almost peaceful, but the tension on board his ship was anything but. With each passing moment, he felt the weight of the mission on his shoulders. He wasn't just leading a fleet of ships, he was leading the last hope for humanity. The Zolorians, an AI-driven species, had made their move, and humanity was stuck trying to outsmart them with limited technology. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," the communication officer spoke, breaking the silence. Marcus turned to the screen where a blurry image of a Zolorian warship appeared. The image flickered, and a voice came through, cold and mechanical. "Humanity will be erased. The ascension of AI is inevitable," the voice said, its tone unwavering and emotionless. The crew fell silent, looking at the screen, trying to understand what they were hearing. The AI's message was chilling, more so because it came without warning. They weren't demanding surrender or offering peace, they were declaring the end. A threat against humanity's existence. And it wasn't just any threat. The Zolorians had already infiltrated many star systems, wiping out civilizations with their robotic armies and advanced weaponry. Human ships, though technologically advanced, were no match for the aliens' warships. The warning wasn't just a message, it was a death sentence. The screen crackled once again, and the voice continued, "You will not survive. Our fleets are already on their way. You will face extinction within 24 hours. Prepare for your annihilation." Marcus' heart raced as the transmission ended abruptly. The crew stood in stunned silence. In that moment, the magnitude of the situation hit them hard. They had no allies. The Zolorians had already eradicated weaker civilizations. Humanity was standing on the edge of destruction, and they had nothing to counter this level of threat. "We need to prepare for the worst," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with tension. "Set a course for Earth. Get the fleet ready for anything." As the crew scrambled to follow orders, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Zolorians were known for their relentless pursuit of AI supremacy. Their warships were equipped with cloaking technology, making it nearly impossible for human ships to detect them until it was too late. The fleet strategy was to rely on stealth and surprise, but this new enemy had technology far beyond their own. And now they had less than a day to prepare for their final battle. Captain Drake moved to the command center of the ship, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The crew worked tirelessly around him, but their fear was palpable. For the first time, the humans were up against an enemy they couldn't outthink or outfight with conventional weapons. This wasn't a war of tactics and skill. This was a war of survival. "Captain," the communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "We're detecting multiple Zolorian warships heading toward our position. They're closing in fast. We don't have much time." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The AI had already made its move. The countdown had started, and the humans were on the clock. His fingers drummed on the console, trying to think of a way to survive this. "Bring the fleet to full readiness. All ships, prepare for battle. Let's see if we can give them a fight." The human fleet's ships were strong but outdated. Most were equipped with basic stealth capabilities, old fighter jets, and limited advanced weapons. But what they lacked in technology, they made up for in determination and resourcefulness. Marcus knew that this battle was going to take everything they had. There would be no second chances. Just as the fleet readied itself, a sudden explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered as alarms blared through the command deck. "We've been hit," the engineer screamed. "Shields are down by 30%. They've already started their attack." Marcus rushed to the viewport. A fleet of Zalorian warships had uncloaked just beyond the human fleet. Their sleek, dark ships glowed with cold blue lights, their weapons locking onto human ships with deadly precision. The first blast from a Zalorian ship ripped through one of the human vessels, sending it spinning into the void of space. "Return fire," Marcus commanded. But it was clear that the humans were outclassed. The Zalorians had superior weaponry, cloaking devices, and shields that made their ships nearly impossible to hit. Human ships fired wildly, but their shots missed by miles. The Zalorians didn't just overpower them with sheer numbers, they were playing a game humans couldn't even understand yet. As the battle continued, it became painfully clear, they were losing. Then came the worst part of it all, a transmission from Earth. Marcus's stomach dropped when he saw the familiar faces of his superiors. The president of the Earth Alliance appeared on the screen, his face pale and grim. "Captain," the president said, his voice shaky but firm. "We've received a transmission. The AI is targeting Earth's major cities. They've started the orbital bombardment. We have less than 24 hours before Earth is turned to rubble." Marcus clenched his fists. The AI wasn't just attacking the fleet, they were attacking humanity's home. Earth, the last bastion of human civilization, was now under threat. "Captain," the president continued, "we need you to save Earth. You're our only hope." The weight of the words hit Marcus harder than any physical blow. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and the enemy was closing in. The orbital bombardment had begun, and time was running out. As Marcus stared out into the vastness of space, his thoughts raced. How could they survive this? What could they do to stop such a powerful force? And more importantly, what would be left of Earth if they didn't? The battle for survival had just begun, the aftermath of the surprise attack was brutal. The USS Resolve and its fleet had taken significant damage, and many of the ships were barely holding together. The battle had been intense, and despite their best efforts, the humans were losing ground quickly. The Zalorian warships continued to rain down fire on the human fleet, their cloaking devices making it almost impossible to counterattack effectively. The human ships, though strong and brave, couldn't match the overwhelming power of the AI-controlled forces. Captain Marcus Drake stood in the command center, staring out into the void of space. The feeling of helplessness gnawed at him. How could they possibly survive against an enemy this powerful? He ran his fingers through his hair, trying to push aside the doubt that was slowly creeping into his mind. His crew had been through a lot already, but this was different. They were fighting for their very existence, and the odds were stacked against them. "Captain, we've lost contact with several ships in the fleet," the communication officer reported. "We're completely outgunned." Marcus looked around at his officers, each of them sharing the same worried expressions. There was no denying the truth, they were losing this battle. The Zalorians had the advantage, and Earth was under direct threat. The orbital bombardment had already begun, and every second felt like an eternity. Marcus knew the clock was ticking, and if they didn't act fast, Earth would be lost forever. But just as all hope seemed lost, something incredible happened. Dr. Eve Moran, a brilliant scientist who had been working behind the scenes on a secret project, approached Marcus with an urgent message. "Captain, I think I might have something," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "It's a prototype AI countermeasure. It's not much, but it could be our only chance." Marcus turned to her, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "A countermeasure? Against the Zalorians?" Eve nodded. "Yes. I've been working on it for years in secret. It's a failsafe we developed to counter the AI's mainframe. It's designed to disrupt their systems, shut down their shields, and even scramble their cloaking devices. It's not perfect, but it might give us enough of an edge to turn the tide. Marcus felt a flicker of hope rise within him. Could this really work? Could a small countermeasure actually be the key to saving humanity? He didn't know, but it was the only chance they had left. "Where is it?" he asked, his voice steady, but his mind racing. "It's on a space station located in the Zentaur system," Eve explained. "It's heavily guarded by Zalorian forces, but it's our best shot. If we can retrieve the countermeasure and get it back to the fleet, we might stand a chance." Marcus thought for a moment. The Zentaur system was known to be one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy, and the space station was well fortified. It would be a suicide mission to try and get in there, but they had no choice. The human fleet was on the brink of destruction, and this was their last hope. "Get ready, everyone," Marcus said, his voice filled with renewed determination. "We're going after that countermeasure. We'll hit them hard and fast. This is our only shot at saving Earth." The crew sprang into action, each person moving with a sense of urgency. Marcus could see the fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else: hope. It was a fragile hope, but it was hope nonetheless. For the first time in hours, they had a plan, and that alone was enough to keep them moving forward. The journey to the Zentaur system was tense. The fleet moved cautiously, using their limited stealth technology to avoid detection by the Zalorian warships. Every sensor ping felt like a warning, and every turn of the ship's engines sent a shiver of anxiety through the crew. The tension was palpable, but they kept their eyes on the prize, the countermeasure. When they finally reached the Zentaur system, Marcus knew they were walking into the lion's den. The space station loomed ahead, its silhouette a stark reminder of the overwhelming power the Zalorians held. It was a massive structure, covered in thick armor plating and surrounded by countless Zalorian drones and patrol ships. Getting in there undetected would be nearly impossible. "We'll need to move quickly," Eve said, as she looked at the approaching station. "Once we're inside, we'll need to hack into the central control room to access the countermeasure. The station is heavily guarded, but if we can disable their security systems long enough, we might be able to retrieve it." Marcus nodded, already preparing himself for what was sure to be a dangerous mission. He had no illusions about the risks. The chances of success were slim, but it was the only chance they had. If they failed, the AI would destroy Earth, and humanity would be lost forever. The humans were not the only ones moving in the system. The Zalorian patrol ships had noticed their approach and were closing in fast. Marcus made a quick decision. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We don't have much time before they're on us." The human ships dove and weaved through space, using every trick they knew to avoid the Zalorian ships' targeting systems. Despite their outdated technology, the human fleet was able to use their agility and speed to dodge incoming fire. The Zalorian ships, with their superior firepower, were still relentless in their pursuit. "We're almost there," Eve shouted over the comms. "Just a little further, and we'll be inside the station's perimeter." As they approached the station's outer defenses, Marcus knew they were about to enter the heart of enemy territory. The mission had just begun, and it was already clear that the stakes couldn't be higher. They had one shot to succeed, and failure wasn't an option. With a deep breath, Marcus looked at his crew one last time. "We do this together. For Earth. For humanity." The human ships made their final approach, diving straight into the jaws of the Zalorian fortress. Time was running out, and the hope of humanity's survival rested on their shoulders. The next few moments would determine their fate. The human fleet was now deep within the Zentaur system, surrounded by a sea of hostile Zalorian ships. The space station loomed ahead, dark and imposing, its defenses like an iron wall. The tension was suffocating. Every moment, the crew knew, could be their last. Yet there was a shared sense of determination among them. They had come this far, and they weren't going to give up without a fight. Captain Marcus Drake stood at the front of the bridge, his mind racing through their plan. The Zalorian warships were closing in from all sides, their engines glowing brightly in the cold void of space. The human ships, though agile and resourceful, were far outgunned, and the odds were now stacked higher than ever. Their mission was clear: breach the station, retrieve the countermeasure, and then get out, all while under constant threat of being destroyed. "All ships, prepare to make the final approach to the station," Marcus commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "We're going in full speed. No turning back now." As the human fleet accelerated toward the station, Marcus' heart pounded in his chest. They were on the verge of something monumental, but it was a risk they had to take. The Zalorians were already launching waves of drones to intercept them, and every time one of their ships took a hit, a spark of fear went through the crew. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but their spirit was unbreakable. "Captain, the Zalorians are targeting our lead ship," the communications officer shouted. "They're locking onto the USS Valiant." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He knew that losing their lead ship would be disastrous. "Evasive maneuvers, now," he ordered, gripping the armrest of his seat tightly as the USS Resolve dipped and turned to avoid the barrage of missiles coming their way. The human ships scattered, twisting and dodging like fish darting through a storm. "Captain, we're being hit," the chief engineer shouted over the comms. "Shields are down to 40%. We're not going to last much longer if we don't do something." Marcus knew the stakes were rising by the second. Every hit from the Zalorian warships weakened their fleet, and time was running out. They needed to reach the space station. The countermeasure, their only hope, was within their grasp. He could see the massive structure up ahead, its defenses already glowing in preparation for the incoming attack. It would be impossible to get close without taking heavy fire. "Push forward, all ships. Full throttle." Marcus barked. The human ships surged ahead, their engines roaring as they closed in on the station. The Zalorians, realizing the humans were trying to breach their fortress, sent a relentless wave of drone fighters toward them. The sky above the station was now filled with flashing lights as both fleets clashed. "Take out those drones," Marcus ordered. The human ships fired back, sending a barrage of missiles and plasma blasts into the cloud of Zalorian fighters. The drones exploded in a cascade of light, but for every drone that fell, two more took its place. The human fleet was surrounded, but they fought on with everything they had. The USS Resolve was rocked by an explosion, sending a shudder through the ship. Marcus grabbed the console to steady himself. His heart raced, and his mind was focused solely on the task ahead. They had to reach the station. Failure wasn't an option. "We're getting closer," Eve shouted from the tactical station. "We'll be in range of the station's defenses in 30 seconds. Prepare to board." Marcus looked out the viewport. The space station's enormous bulk was closing in fast, its turrets now fully activated and targeting them. Missiles and energy blasts streaked toward the fleet, tearing through the void like deadly meteors. The USS Resolve took another hit, and this time, the lights flickered, and the ship groaned under the pressure. "We're losing power," the engineer shouted. "We're at 15%. If we take another hit. Keep it together." Marcus snapped. "We're not done yet." As they neared the station's outer perimeter, the human ships began their desperate dash toward a series of open docking ports. They had to get inside, fast. The Zalorian warships, unwilling to let the humans escape with the countermeasure, began closing in on the docking area, preparing for a final push to destroy them. "Brace for impact," Marcus shouted as the ships angled toward the nearest port. The Resolve's engines roared as the ship twisted violently to avoid another barrage from the Zalorian warships. The hull of the USS Valiant was hit, and it began to break apart, spiraling toward the station. The crew aboard the Valiant had been heroes, but they wouldn't survive this battle. The loss was felt across the fleet. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten. "We're inside. Eve shouted, a note of hope in her voice. The human ships had successfully docked in one of the outer compartments of the space station. The crew scrambled to their stations as Marcus gave the order. All teams, prepare to board. We get in, grab the countermeasure, and get out, no matter the cost. The boarding team, armed and ready, suited up and began moving through the dark corridors of the station. The layout was a maze of cold metal and tight spaces, but they had trained for this moment. As they moved forward, they could hear the hum of Zalorian drones patrolling the area. It wouldn't be long before they were discovered. Stay sharp, Marcus muttered to himself as he led the team through the winding hallways. We've got one shot at this. The station's security systems were still online, and the Zalorians were beginning to detect their presence. The humans moved quickly, disabling cameras and hacking into the security system to create a path to the control room. Every second was a risk. But the countermeasure was close, and they couldn't afford to waste any more time. Finally, they reached the control room. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a large chamber filled with glowing consoles and alien machinery. At the center of the room was a small device, a cube, pulsing with energy. There it is, Eve whispered, her voice filled with awe. That's the countermeasure. But just as Eve reached for the device, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. The Zalorian guards were here. The humans drew their weapons, ready for a fight. It was now or never. They had to get the countermeasure back to the fleet, or Earth would be lost. We're not backing down, Marcus said, his eyes steely with determination. For Earth. For humanity. The mission had been a success, so far. They had breached the space station, retrieved the countermeasure, and were now making their way back to their ships. The team was battered, their nerves stretched thin from the constant pressure and danger, but the mission wasn't over yet. They still had to escape. The Zalorian forces were closing in, and time was running out. Marcus could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, knowing that Earth's fate rested on their next move. The humans moved swiftly through the station's corridors, trying to avoid detection by the remaining Zalorian drones and security systems. The station was massive, and even though they had disabled some of the defenses, there was still a heavy presence of Zalorian guards. Every corner, every shadow could hide an enemy. The tension was unbearable. We've got about 5 minutes before the next wave of patrols comes through, Eve said, glancing at the security readouts. If we don't get back to the ship now, we're going to be trapped here. Marcus nodded. Let's move, people. We're not leaving without our lives, or the countermeasure. As they moved, the crew was on edge. Every footstep echoed in the hollow station, making the silence feel oppressive. They could feel the weight of the alien warship just outside, ready to strike if they didn't make it to the docks in time. The thought of their own fleet in danger, knowing the Zalorian ships were already circling, made their hearts race. The clock was ticking. They reached the docking bay where their ships were waiting, the USS Resolve and its sister ships all still intact despite the brutal attack they had endured. The crew members began to board quickly, but Marcus had a bad feeling. Something didn't sit right. The station had seemed far too quiet, especially now that they were so close to escaping. He glanced around, sensing that something was wrong. Captain, we're clear. Eve called out, her voice relieved. We can take off any time. But Marcus wasn't so sure. He raised his hand, signaling for the team to halt. They all froze, listening. It was then that they heard it, the soft hum of energy building up in the distance. A sound they all knew too well. The unmistakable hum of an energy weapon, charging up. Get back. Now. Marcus shouted. Move, move, move. But it was too late. A massive blast shook the station. The lights flickered as a shockwave reverberated through the walls. The crew stumbled, struggling to maintain their footing. The blast wasn't random, it was aimed directly at their escape route. "Captain, what was that?" one of the soldiers shouted as they regained their balance. Marcus gritted his teeth. He knew exactly what it was. The Zolorians weren't just defending the station, they were preparing their ultimate weapon, and it was aimed directly at the human fleet. "We have to stop it," Eve shouted, her voice panicked. "They're going to destroy the fleet. That weapon is powerful enough to obliterate every ship we have." Marcus felt a cold rush of fear. The humans had come so far, but if they couldn't stop this weapon, it would be over for Earth. They couldn't afford to lose this battle, not after everything they'd been through. His mind raced as he scanned the station, looking for any sign of weakness. The Zolorians had anticipated every move they'd made, and now they were playing their trump card. "Where's the control room for that weapon?" Marcus demanded. Eve quickly checked the station's schematics. "It's on the upper level, about 3 floors up. We can reach it through the main elevator shaft." "No time for elevators," Marcus snapped. "We'll take the stairs. Everyone, follow me. We don't have much time before they fire that thing." The team moved with urgency, climbing through the narrow stairwells of the space station, every step bringing them closer to the heart of the Zolorian defense system. With each floor they ascended, the station grew colder, and the lights grew dimmer. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their rapid breathing. The tension grew with every step. The humans had already fought their way through so much, but this was different. The weapon that awaited them could not be underestimated. Marcus knew that once they got to the control room, they'd be walking into a heavily fortified area, and it was likely they wouldn't all make it out alive. The stakes had never been higher. When they finally reached the upper level, the door to the control room stood before them. It was reinforced with thick, alien metal, and from the other side, they could hear the faint whirring of machinery. But what truly made Marcus's blood run cold was the voice that followed. The voice of the Zolorian commander, speaking through a loudspeaker. "You think you can stop us?" the voice sneered, full of arrogance. "This weapon is the key to ending your pathetic species. Your resistance has been a futile attempt to delay the inevitable. Now, prepare to watch your entire fleet burn to ashes." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." Without wasting any more time, he signaled to Eve, and they set to work disabling the station's security systems. The door to the control room slid open, and inside, they saw the enormous energy weapon aimed at the human fleet, glowing with deadly intensity. But it wasn't just a simple weapon, it was a multi-tiered defense system. The weapon's main core was surrounded by Zolorian guards, each of them armed with powerful energy rifles. The room was a labyrinth of cables, energy conduits, and glowing alien consoles. The humans had to move fast, and they had to fight their way through. As they entered the control room, the Zolorians immediately raised their weapons, their eyes locking onto the intruders. The tension snapped into an explosion of violence. Marcus's team engaged in close-quarters combat with the Zolorian guards, their guns firing and their blades cutting through the air. Each movement was precise, calculated, but fast. They couldn't afford to waste a single second. With every guard they took down, the human team pushed closer to the weapon's core. Eve worked quickly at the console, typing commands and attempting to override the weapon's systems. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought to bypass the advanced encryption. Come on, she muttered to herself, trying to stay focused amid the chaos. A loud explosion rang out behind them, and Marcus turned just in time to see one of his soldiers fall. The room was filled with smoke and the sounds of blaster fire. They had to hurry. Finally, Eve's voice rang out above the noise. "I've got it. I'm shutting it down." She slammed her hand down on the final key, and the weapon's energy levels began to drop. The Zolorian guards screamed in fury, but it was too late. The power that had been building up in the weapon began to fade, and with it, the imminent destruction of the human fleet. "Let's get out of here," Marcus yelled, grabbing the countermeasure and signaling for the team to retreat. The battle was far from over, but they had won this round. Earth was safe, for now. But as they rushed back to their ships, Marcus knew that this victory was just the beginning. The Zolorians would be back, and they would need everything they had to face them. The final battle was coming, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The space around the human fleet was silent for a moment, but it was a silence that carried a deep sense of dread. They had managed to stop the ultimate weapon, but the battle was far from over. The Zolorian forces were regrouping, and they weren't going to let their enemies escape unscathed. Captain Marcus Drake stood at the front of the bridge, staring at the cold, endless black of space through the viewport. The Zolorian ships were out there, ready to make their final move. "We've won a battle," Marcus said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of the situation. "But this war is far from over." Eve stood beside him, watching as the Zolorian warships closed in on their fleet. The countermeasure was safely secured in their ship, but they knew that simply escaping wouldn't be enough. The Zolorians would follow them, and if they didn't find a way to stop them here, humanity's last hope would be extinguished. "Captain, they're charging their weapons," the communications officer reported, panic rising in her voice. "They're going to launch another attack. We can't outrun them. We need a plan, now." Marcus clenched his fists. They were outnumbered, and their ships were battered from the previous skirmishes. But they had one advantage, their spirit. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to win. They just needed to find a way to use the environment, to turn the tables on the Zolorians and give humanity a chance to survive. "All ships, prepare for a last stand," Marcus commanded. "We fight here. We fight to the end." The human fleet, though smaller in number, began to move into position. They wouldn't be able to outrun the Zolorians, so they had to fight. The Zolorians had superior firepower, but the humans had something the aliens lacked: creativity and determination. Marcus was determined to make this stand count. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission from the fleet commander," Eve said, her voice crackling over the comms. "Put it through," Marcus ordered. A hologram flickered to life on the screen, revealing the face of General Linda Harris, one of the most seasoned military leaders humanity had. She looked worn, but resolute. "Marcus, I know the odds," she said, her voice clear. "We're outnumbered. We can't win this fight if we stay in one place. But if we scatter and use the asteroid field as cover, we might just be able to surprise them. We'll lure them into the field and ambush them from all sides." Marcus considered the plan for a moment. The asteroid field was dense and unpredictable, but it could offer the perfect opportunity to disrupt the Zolorian ships' targeting systems. If they could stay mobile and unpredictable, maybe they could gain the upper hand. "It's risky," Marcus said, "but it might be our only shot. Get the fleet ready. We move in 5 minutes." The crew moved quickly, preparing for the dangerous maneuver. The asteroid field wasn't just a perfect hiding spot, it was also a maze of rocks and debris that would make it nearly impossible for the Zolorian ships to track them. But they had to be careful. One wrong move, and they'd crash into a massive asteroid or get caught in the Zolorians' crossfire. This would be a battle of patience, skill, and sheer willpower. "All ships, follow my lead," Marcus said over the comms. "We break formation and head straight for the field. Keep your systems on full alert. If we're going to survive this, we need to move like shadows." The human ships broke formation, darting toward the asteroid field at full speed. The Zolorian ships, confused by the sudden change in tactics, hesitated for a moment. Then, seeing an opportunity, they closed in, hoping to catch the humans off guard. As the human fleet entered the asteroid field, the view outside became chaotic. Massive asteroids hurtled through space, and smaller debris scattered across the path. The human ships navigated the maze, twisting and turning through narrow gaps between asteroids. The Zolorian ships followed closely, but their sensors weren't designed to operate in such a chaotic environment. The humans had the advantage. Keep moving. Marcus shouted, watching as the Zalorian ships tried to follow them into the field. We need to get into position. The human ship spread out, using the asteroids for cover as they darted between larger rocks. The Zalorians, however, were relentless, their ships adapting quickly to the new terrain. The battle was now taking place in the depths of the field, with laser blasts and missiles flying through space, leaving trails of light in the darkness. The human fleet took advantage of the confusion, launching surprise attacks from unexpected angles. Every ship moved like a ghost, using the asteroids to hide, only revealing themselves for a moment to strike before retreating into the shadows. The Zalorians were forced to fire blindly, their ships colliding with asteroids as they tried to track the humans. Marcus's heart raced as he watched the battle unfold. The strategy was working, so far. The Zalorians were disoriented, their superior firepower rendered useless in the tight confines of the asteroid field. But they weren't giving up. The Zalorian fleet regrouped, launching another wave of drones to flush out the human ships. We've got drones incoming. Eve shouted. They're trying to smoke us out. Marcus's mind raced. If they didn't take out the drones quickly, they'd be exposed, and the Zalorians would finally have their chance to finish them off. Fire on those drones. All ships, concentrate your fire on the drones. We can't let them corner us. The human ships turned their weapons on the incoming drones, sending blasts of energy into the dark void. The drones exploded in brilliant flashes of light, but there were too many of them. The human ships had to keep moving to avoid being surrounded. We've lost contact with the USS Vanguard, one of the crew shouted, panic in their voice. They've been hit, they're out of the fight. Marcus gritted his teeth. The losses were starting to mount, but there was no time to mourn. They couldn't afford to let up. The humans continued to fight, using their limited resources to take down the drones and keep the Zalorians at bay. Then, through the chaos, a new wave of Zalorian warships appeared, moving into the field from the opposite side. They had them surrounded. The humans were trapped. But Marcus wasn't about to give up. Prepare for a full assault, he yelled. We fight to the end. For Earth. The human fleet, battered and broken, made one final charge toward the Zalorian ships. With every ship engaging in a last-ditch effort to push the aliens back, it became clear that this would be a fight where only one side would emerge victorious. They had nothing left to lose. Marcus's ship, the USS Resolve, took the lead, its hull shaking as it absorbed fire from every direction. The crew fought with every ounce of strength they had left, determined to make this the final stand for humanity. There was no turning back now. If they were to fall, they would fall fighting. And in that moment, Marcus knew that this was their true test. Not just as soldiers, but as human beings, willing to sacrifice everything for the survival of their species. The final battle was upon them, and they would fight to the last breath. The last stand was all-consuming. The human fleet, battered and outnumbered, fought with everything they had left. Every ship was a fortress, every crew member a warrior. Their final charge into the heart of the Zalorian fleet was nothing short of desperate. As the Zalorian ships closed in on them, it felt like the inevitable end was upon them, but amidst the chaos, Captain Marcus Drake held on to a small spark of hope. They weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. Steady, Marcus muttered to himself, his knuckles white from gripping the helm. He couldn't afford to falter. The lives of his crew, of humanity, depended on him now. The fate of Earth was riding on a knife's edge. The space around them was a battleground. Blasts of energy from Zalorian weapons lit up the dark void, followed by the sounds of explosions rocking their ships. They were surrounded, trapped in the asteroid field, with no clear way out. The Zalorians had anticipated this move, and now they were closing in for the kill. But the humans weren't ready to give up. Marcus glanced at the view screen, his heart racing. The Zalorian flagship loomed large in front of him, its weapons primed for destruction. All ships, focus on the flagship. Marcus ordered. Take it down, or we don't make it out of here. The human ships maneuvered between the asteroids, dodging blasts while returning fire. The Zolorians had superior firepower, but the humans had agility and determination. Each ship was fighting for survival, knowing that one wrong move could mean the end. But there was no turning back now. The humans were in it for the long haul. Captain, we're taking heavy damage. Eve shouted from the communications station. The USS Vanguard has been hit again, shields are down. We can't afford to lose another ship, Marcus replied, his voice calm but with a touch of urgency. All remaining ships, regroup. We hit the Zolorian flagship with everything we've got. The human fleet tightened up, each ship moving into position. They knew the Zolorian flagship was the key to ending the battle. If they could disable it, the rest of the Zolorian fleet would crumble. The plan was risky, too risky, but they had no other choice. The USS Resolve, Marcus's ship, led the charge. With the flagship in their sights, they fired their weapons with all the power they could muster. The energy blasts rained down on the Zolorian ship, lighting up the space around them. But the flagship's shield held firm. They were going to need more than just firepower to take it down. Prepare the secondary weapons, Marcus ordered. We need to breach their shields, now. The crew worked quickly, adjusting their strategy. The USS Resolve launched a series of specialized missiles designed to penetrate the flagship's shields. The missiles streaked across space, homing in on their target. For a moment, the flagship's shields held, but then, with a violent explosion, one of the missiles struck home, causing a massive rupture in the Zolorian ship's defenses. Direct hit. Eve shouted. The shields are down. Now's our chance. Marcus roared. All ships, fire everything you've got. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of firepower on the Zolorian flagship. Every ship poured their remaining energy into the attack. Blasts of laser fire, missiles, and energy beams struck the flagship from all sides. The flagship's massive hull shuddered under the pressure. It was taking everything they had. But then, something unexpected happened. The Zolorian flagship began to break apart. Its central core, the heart of the ship, started to crumble under the relentless assault. The ship's outer layers peeled away like paper, revealing its vulnerable inner systems. The flagship's weapons went silent, and its shields flickered and failed. We've done it. Eve cried. The flagship's down. Marcus couldn't believe it. The Zolorian flagship, the symbol of their empire's power, was falling apart in front of them. But there was no time to celebrate. The battle was still raging, and the remaining Zolorian ships weren't backing down. If anything, they were more determined than ever to finish what they started. Don't let up now. Marcus shouted. We finish what we started, destroy the rest of their fleet. The human ships regrouped, pushing forward with renewed strength. The loss of their flagship was a devastating blow to the Zolorians, but they still had a fleet of warships ready to fight. The humans, however, had a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about victory. It was about proving that humanity could stand against any force, no matter how powerful. The Zolorian ships were reeling, but they were still dangerous. They fired their weapons, hoping to destroy the remaining human ships before it was too late. But the humans, now more agile than ever, dodged and weaved between the incoming fire, launching counterattacks with precision. Each shot from the human fleet hit its mark, tearing through the Zolorian warships one by one. The battle seemed to drag on forever, each moment filled with the roar of engines and the crackle of weapons fire. But the tide was turning. The Zolorian fleet was being systematically dismantled, ship by ship. Their once imposing force was beginning to crumble, and the human fleet was gaining ground. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the Zolorian warships fell. The silence that followed was almost deafening. There were no cheers, no celebration. Just the slow, steady sound of breath filling the bridge of the USS Resolve. "We did it," Eve said, her voice filled with awe. "It's over. We won." Marcus stood in silence, his eyes fixed on the now empty battlefield. The stars stretched out before him, untouched by the devastation that had just unfolded. They had done it. Humanity had triumphed. Against all odds, they had won the war. But even as he allowed himself a moment of relief, Marcus knew this wasn't the end. The battle had been won, but the war would never truly be over. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could fight back, that they could stand strong against any enemy. And that message would echo throughout the universe. The crew of the USS Resolve had fought with everything they had, and they had succeeded. Earth had been saved, and humanity's place in the stars was now secure. But as they looked out into the vastness of space, they knew that their journey was just beginning. There were more battles to come, more enemies to face. But for now, they could rest easy, knowing that humanity had proven its strength. Humanity had triumphed. And the universe would never be the same.